Good evening, everyone at home, live streaming. Welcome to Justice for New Orleans. This is an intimate conversation with the candidates. I am Sherman DeSell of WDSU, your moderator for this evening. This event is hosted by Franklin Avenue Baptist Church and sponsored by the Sigma Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Senior Voters Caucus, the New Orleans, Louisiana chapter of Links Incorporated, and WBOK. Before we formally begin tonight, we will ask that Pastor Fred Luter, tonight's host, deliver an invocation for us.
Thank you, Sherman. When I was asked to host this event, I hurriedly said yes, because this is an important election, and I felt it was crucial and critical for the citizens of New Orleans to hear from these candidates in both the DA race and the Supreme Court race. And so those of you who are watching, calls anyone, your neighbor, your coworker, your church member, your staff, let them know that this forum is live on all of our social media platforms, on our church website, on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, Instagram, and Twitter. Just go to at FABC NOLA and make sure you are part of this forum on tonight. I know thousands are always online for us, and we wanted to make sure that you're aware of what's going on. So thank you for watching, thank you for tuning in, and be prepared to just hear from the hearts of each of these candidates. Let us pray. Father, I'm so grateful as pastor of this church and to host this forum on tonight. I thank you and praise you for each of these candidates, for their family members, for their campaign teams, God. Thank you for Sherman, who's moderating on tonight, God. Thank you for our AV team, God, who's making this available on live stream, God. Thank you for everyone that's here tonight and those who are watching by way of internet. God, bless our time together. May it be fruitful, may it be rewarding, may it be productive, and may it give clarity to those of us who will go to the poll on November the 3rd and vote for one of these candidates. We praise you in advance for what you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pastor Luter, thank you very much for that invocation. Also important to note that today is National Voter Registration Day. It's an important time to be engaged in this process to make sure that you are registered to vote for this upcoming election. We'd like to welcome our candidates for the DAs and Louisiana Supreme Court District 7 races this evening. For clarity, this is not an endorsement of any candidate's platform, but rather an open discussion about the issues facing our city. And as such, we're asking candidates to be respectful of the sanctuary, each other, and the office that you seek. To conform with the city's mandatory mask mandate, we ask that each candidate, when not speaking, wear their mask. Now, each candidate will be given an opportunity to give an opening statement, answer questions prepared by myself, answer what we refer to as at WDSU as hot seat questions, and finally give a closing statement. Now, here's some key factors tonight. There will be a 1 minute to give your opening statement and to answer to the questions. The hot seat questions will require a yes or no answer only. For the closing statement, 2 minutes will be allowed. The timekeeper seated in front of you here will display the amount of time remaining for your answer at the 60-second, 30-second, and 15-second mark. Please be mindful of that time. We will begin tonight's conversation with the candidates for Orleans Parish District Attorney. Our candidates this evening, retired Judge Arthur L. Hunter Jr., retired Judge Kiva Landrum, former Judge Morris Reed, who is not present with us at this time, and Council Member Jason Williams. Thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. The people at home appreciate you being a part of this. We'll begin with our opening statements by Judge Arthur Hunter, followed by Judge Kiva Landrum, and finally, Council Member Jason Williams. Judge.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone for inviting us all here tonight to express our positions about the District Attorney's Office. I'm Arthur Hunter, and I'm running for District Attorney. I was a police officer for 23 years, police officer for 4 years, and I was a criminal district court for 23 years as a judge. And one of the things I learned, if we want to have a safer city, then we need a district attorney that's going to reduce recidivism, prosecute cases fairly without the lawsuits and the drama, and as well, prosecute cases fairly, and as well reduce recidivism, and hold people accountable for their actions. So one of the things I want to do when I become a district attorney is to make sure that we do the right thing, to make sure that we make our city safer, and that we be fair. And that concludes my opening.
Judge Arthur Hunter, thank you. Judge Kiva Landrum.
Good evening and thank you. I am Kiva Landrum and I am seeking to be our next district attorney in New Orleans. I've had the opportunity to serve as the district attorney when Eddie Jordan departed the office, becoming the first female district attorney in the state of Louisiana. I also have had the opportunity to serve as a criminal district court judge for the last 12 years, working on advancing the court in criminal justice reform. I want to, as our next district attorney, reimagine criminal justice in New Orleans, as well as advance the public safety of our community. I am going to prioritize victim crimes and violent crimes and crimes against women. Make sure that we hold our police officers accountable for their actions. Make sure that we address the issues surrounding the juveniles in our community and use restorative justice techniques. I also am going to address the root causes of crime so that we can reduce recidivism. This is a critical time in our community, and I have stepped up in critical times before, and I am seeking to do that again as our next district attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Counsel.
My name is Jason Williams. I'm not going to spend time on my biography because you know who I am. I am your council president who has stood up at every single juncture when it was necessary. When the DA was putting rape survivors and domestic abuse survivors in jail, I was the only one at these two tables that stood up and fought against it. When the Sewage and Water Board was allowing water to flood in our streets at a rate that it had never had before, and they said it was a new normal, I was a person to stand up and say this is not normal and this is unacceptable, and get to the real answers about which turbines were working and which turbines are not working. Progress, reform, these are not easy things. And I understand, standing at City Hall when I had to stand up against Leon Canizaro's atrocities, I did that from City Hall. But the people who had the best view of his atrocities were right in court with him. And they made a decision to remain neutral and quiet during moments of atrocity and oppression by this particular DA. Real reform takes the courage to stand up, not sit down and be neutral. When you are neutral, you are supporting the oppressor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We're now joined by former Judge Morris Reed. Give him a minute to get seated. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Judge, if you'd like to, we were right in the middle of introductions. You will have 1 minute to give your introduction. There's a timekeeper right in the front of you, and they will give you the time. Yeah, that's your microphone. Feel free to pick it up.
My name is Morris Reed. I'm not going to hold the mic if that's all right.
Okay. Is his mic on?
Is it on?
Sound people are saying that they'll need you to hold it. If you could.
Is it on? I can't hold it. My papers too. Okay. I have 1 minute for an opening?
1 minute, yes, sir. And your timekeeper is right in the front.
All right. Where is the timekeeper?
Timekeeper's here. Ben, show your hand.
All right. You give me a 10-minute one? I'm Morris Reed, former federal prosecutor, special agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, detective with NOPD and a native New Orleanian, having worked as a chief of the Civil Rights Unit in the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as a special prosecutor in the DA's office. You know, I'm shaped by tremendous incidents that have occurred in our community. And I reflect back on names such as Sergeant Charles Cheatham, the Algiers 7, Gerard Glover, Adolph Archie, Henry Glover, Danziger Bridge, and now the consent decree. That tells a history of our city as it has trampled on the rights of citizens in this community, their civil rights.
I'm committed to administering a district attorney's office in a fair and equitable manner for all citizens, regardless of their race, creed, or color, or gender, if I'm elected as your district attorney.
Thank you very much, Judge. Just to make sure that you are aware of the rules, each candidate will be given an opportunity to give an opening statement, as we just did. You will answer questions prepared by myself, then another round of what we refer to as hot seat questions, and finally give a closing statement. There will also be a 1 minute given to each question that you have. The hot seat questions will require a yes or no answer only. And for the closing statement, 2 minutes will be allowed. Everyone clear on the rules? Thank you very much. We will proceed tonight. Our first question. New Orleans has seen a steady increase in violent crime involving juvenile offenders. What would some of your strategies be to combat this multifaceted issue? We're going to start with Judge Kiva Landrum.
Thank you. So I believe, number one, that we have to look at the juvenile crime and decide whether or not there are adult actors involved in that crime. I believe that some of the crime that we have experienced, these juveniles are, in fact, operating at the control or at the behest of some adult actors. And so we have to identify who those adult actors are and first hold them accountable. And then once we do that, then we can identify what is going on with the juveniles and then look to the root issues of those things. And with those juvenile offenders, we have to treat them as juveniles and not prosecute them in adult court, but also link them with the services that we need. What we know is that there are some underlying causes that are existing, whether it be in the family structure or with the juvenile themselves, and then link them to those services to help them. We need to have our kids feel invested in our New Orleans community. We need to utilize restorative justice techniques with our children so that we can then get to the root of these issues.
Thank you very much, Judge. Same question for Judge Reed.
Well, I think the next district attorney has to have a two-pronged approach. Number one, be a vigorous fighter of crime, combating violent crime and narcotic trafficking in our community. You know, the national government declared a war against drugs, and New Orleans never fired a shot. We have been so tolerant of major drug traffickers in our community. We see no prosecution in our courts of major drug traffickers, and that's why we have a correlated increase of such violent crimes and gang activity in our community. We have to suppress the narcotic trafficking in our community. And we even have that type of activity and corruption spilling over into our police department. A case in one of the notorious cases in our community dealt with police corruption in the Algiers community that led to the Algiers 7 massacre, whereby a cop was killed and they were looking for the murderer of the police officer.
Thank you very much, Judge. That's your time. Councilmember Williams.
First and foremost, I will make a policy of treating our young people like little adults. I will have a policy of transferring juveniles to adult jail, as is the policy right now. I will have a policy of making sure that we have wraparound services within the juvenile court system. So there's mental health intervention. There is PTSD wraparound services to root out the root causes of the young person acting out. I will make sure that the judges are working with my ADAs, and my ADAs will have specialized training to be juvenile ADAs, because it is very different. The juvenile brain is not developed in the same way as the adult brain, but more importantly, we have to keep our neighborhoods safe. So I'll also work with Chief Ferguson to make sure that we have a Tiger team dedicated to car burglaries in neighborhoods so that response time is quickly and those crimes are solved. But once they're solved, we're treating our children like children.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. And Judge Hunter.
Yeah, what I want to do in the juvenile court is bring that child, who's ever taken care of that child, and meet with the judge, also meet with the assistant district attorney, that child's attorney, a social worker, and maybe a psychologist and someone from that child's school and create a comprehensive, holistic plan for that child and deal with the issues within the home as well, with 3 objectives. Number 1, putting that child on a positive path. Number 2, supporting that family and making that first crime the last crime. Because I just don't want to deal with the child for what the child did, but why the child did it. And I think once we get on that path, then we're on the path to reducing crime and putting that child again on the positive path, and 4 or 5 years later not ending up in criminal district court at Tulane and Broad.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question 2. And the order will alternate. Question number 2, as with many other district attorney candidates across the United States this year, all of you have announced a vow to bring some type of criminal justice reform to Orleans Parish. In your opinion, what will be some of the biggest obstacles to battle in that office before the public can see real change? I'm going to start with you, former Judge Morris Reed.
Well, thank you very much. Number 1, well, we will be fighting tradition. You know, I cited some cases. I started off with Charles Cheatham, Sergeant Charles Cheatham, a Vietnam vet who was shot and killed on Bourbon Street by a cop named Stephen Rebo. Because he went to the aid of a black shoeshine boy. No prosecution. No one went to jail for that killing. We have a litany of cases where citizens have been abused or killed, but nobody was brought to justice. To combat that, one of my first order of business will be to establish a Civil Rights Bureau to prosecute, investigate complaints of police brutality and police murders. We're also going to have a vigorous community relations division to work with schools and work with social service agencies, psychologists, and what have you, churches and academia, to work on crime prevention initiatives, such as one that I had as a judge called the Junior Judge Program. So what I started off by saying that we have to be vigorous in prosecution of crime, but we also have to work on the preventative side of the criminal justice equation and trying to prevent crime.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. Judge Hunter.
I think your question was, what are you going to do to fight the forces within the district attorney's office? I mean, once I become the district attorney, we're going to have a policy, and that policy is going to be based on training prosecutors on their ethical and professional duties. We're going to concentrate on the implicit bias, making sure that everyone in there handling cases the same way, regardless of who you are. And we're going to be more involved in the community as well, because I realized, you know, when I was a police officer, if you don't have the community support, you cannot receive information to make an arrest, solve a crime, and present that to a judge or jury. So we have to instill that integrity back in the office. But that integrity starts with the district attorney. That's number 1. And once you have that integrity established, those assistant district attorneys and all the staff there will have no choice but to follow the policy, and that will be the policy once I become district attorney.
Thank you, Judge. Same question to Councilmember Williams.
Read the question from me again, Chairman. I'll make
Sure.
sure.
As with many other DA candidates across the United States this year, all of you have announced a vow to bring some type of criminal justice reform to the parish. But in your opinion, what will be some of the biggest obstacles to battle in that office before the public can see the real change?
That's what I thought you said. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. The criminal justice system and the criminal justice system in the city of New Orleans is steeped in and based in racism. And anyone who is not willing to admit that is not willing to take on the problem. I don't want to bring some change. I know some candidates want to bring a little bit of incremental change. I want to redesign the system from top to bottom so that whether you live next to Shakespeare Park or Audubon Park, you're getting the same fair shake. And the thing that is played against us by every single DA we've had so far is the fear-mongering that reform is antithetical to public safety. But the truth of the matter is, the only way to rebuild trust in our communities is to treat all communities fairly, which we haven't done before. So the biggest battle is going to be the same old, people saying something but not acting on it, and fear-mongering to try to convince the public that, oh, you don't want too much reform because you won't be safe. That's the biggest obstacle.
Thank you very much. Judge Kiva Landrum.
Thank you. I think that the biggest challenge is going to be changing the culture within the office and making sure that everyone that works within that office understands that the office needs to operate with integrity, transparency, transparency and with accountability to the people of New Orleans. And so that is going to take changing the employees, some of the employees in the office who can understand that this office is going to operate with the eye toward reform and building a better relationship with the citizens of this community, making sure that the office is going to operate prioritizing violent crime and crimes against women, and making sure that the office is going to operate by expanding diversion programs and linking people to the causes, root causes of crime and the services that they need. And so it is going to be making sure that the entire culture that has existed within the office changes, and everyone that works there accepts that. And if you cannot accept it, then you will not be welcome to work within the office.
Thank you very much, Judge. Moving on to question number 3. Over the last several years, there has been public outcry over a lack of accountability and bad practices in the district attorney's office, like fake subpoenas and material witness warrants. How do you plan on holding prosecutors accountable for their actions that may lack ethics and justice? I'm going to start with you, Councilmember Williams.
I believe that DAs should be held to the same standard that defense attorneys are held to the same standard that regular people are held to. So first of all, I'm going to have a written policy. And every ADA that works in that office is going to have to sign off that they understand it. And if a DA hides evidence, if a DA engages in putting out a bogus subpoena, then number one, they're going to be fired, but I'm also going to report them to the Bar Association because it's a violation of the oath that they have taken. That has never happened by a DA before. And the only way to have real accountability is for it to start at the top. And it is vitally, vitally crucial that we make sure that those standards are held internally and publicly as well. So I'm going to have a public-facing dashboard where all the data from the DA's office, all the decision-making from the DA's office is shared with the public 24 hours, 7 days a week, the same way I did the city council with the public-facing dashboards.
Councilmember, thank you. Judge Hunter, same question.
As a judge, I was involved in a major case in which Kiva and Jason was involved as well, in which Assistant District Attorney tampered with evidence during the trial. And I held that Assistant District Attorney in contempt of court for the first time in history in New Orleans. But on day one, I'm going to make sure that our Assistant District Attorneys have the training of the law, knowledge of the law, their professional, make sure they're aware of their professional responsibility and their ethical duties as well. And then within my special counsel office, I'm going to make sure that those assistant district attorneys, again, comply with those requirements, but also investigate any allegations of misconduct as well and take the appropriate action.
Thank you very much. Judge Kiva Landrum.
Yes, and for the record, that was not me held in contempt of court. But as for any assistant district attorney, again, they will be trained on what the obligations are for any lawyer as to their ethical obligations as an attorney. And if they do not follow those obligations, they will not be allowed to work within the district attorney's office, will be properly notified to the state bar, and the appropriate action will be taken. Just like under my administration, we will hold police officers accountable for misconduct, attorneys will be held accountable for misconduct. There is no excuse, there will be no exception to the rule, and we are going to operate with transparency, with fairness and integrity.
Thank you very much. Judge Reed.
Within the Office of the Bureau of Civil Rights that I will establish, I will have a unit in that bureau made up of at least a couple of trained investigators and a seasoned prosecutor, and we will establish an office of public integrity on the basis of the federal system. You need an internal mechanism to investigate misconduct on the part of assistant DAs. Our DA's office has a terrible reputation nationally for sending people to death row on trumped up and fabricated evidence, knowing full well they're sending someone to their death and that they never committed the crime. We have to change that image, and that's been articulated by the United States Supreme Court of this nation. that we have one of the worst district attorney's offices in this country. We have to change that image of our office. We have to hold prosecutors accountable. I will establish a training manual for my assistants, and they will have to abide by it and adhere to it.
Thank you, Judge. We're flying by, so I've been told that I can throw in another question. Since I'm an anchor, it didn't throw me off too bad, but I'll go ahead and do this. Here's another question. We can't help but acknowledge the impact that COVID-19 has had on Orleans Parish, on this state, on this nation, and how it's disproportionately impacted our Black community. With that, regardless of who is elected, they will have to operate on a modified budget because of what's been happening. So give your strategy on making sure that the Orleans Parish DA's office is running effectively while still dealing with the pandemic. We'll start with Judge Hunter.
Well, that's correct. Every city department and city agents will have to take a cut, and that includes the DA's office as well. And so we're going to look at the budget on a line by line to determine where we can make cuts. We may have to make cuts in personnel as well. But we also have to consider as well, too, we have to consider public safety, we have to consider public health, and we have to use technology where we can. I mean, when I was, after Katrina, I was appointed the chair of the Disaster Committee for Criminal District Court. And we brought together the sheriff's office, the police department, the public defender, the DA's office, and the clerk's office of public corrections, and created a plan to deal with natural disasters. We need to do the same thing as well to deal with the pandemic, and we need to look at who we arrest and who we release as well.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Landrum?
It is going to be important to assess the budget and assess the personnel and make sure that with any budget cuts, the office will operate within that. But I think the more important issue is going to be looking at the cases that are on the court's dockets. What we know is that we've been in a pandemic for at least 10 months, and a lot of the cases have been stalled with no progress. So I, as the district attorney, will assess each and every docket of those judges and make sure that we are aggressive in making decisions as far as nonviolent and low-level offenders so that we can move those through the process. And that way we can prioritize cases where we have violent crimes and victim crimes and crimes against women and people who are still sitting in jail so that we can actively push those cases through the court system, and so they don't just continue to get stalled. It is going to be important to get some movement on these cases and prioritize them.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Reed?
Well, I think there are resources that haven't been tapped that can be utilized by the district attorney's office. I will seek to hire the best chief administrative officer for fiscal matters and for grant writing and seeking out programs through the federal government and state government to augment the operation of our office. I don't see that happening now. There's a National District Attorneys Association. There's databases that are available if the state had the ingenuity and the wherewithal to, the district attorney's office had the wherewithal to go after that. So first of all, we need a fiscal officer. We need grant writers and individuals who know where to look for funds to bring to the office without having to go to the state legislature in every instance that we need something. Also, we have to reprioritize, reallocate the funds and the resources that's there in the office, get rid of the waste, and try to utilize the taxpayers' money as wise as possible.
Thank you, Judge. Councilmember?
I heard Arthur Hunter and I heard Kiva Landrum say that they planned on taking a look at the DA's budget. That's a good start. I've already looked at the DA's budget and I already know where the fat is. In fact, I look at the budget every single October because the city council goes through that budget, each line item. I know where the fat is. I know who the lawyer is who is making $100,000 plus, who's already cut a deal with one of my opponents to keep that job. And we have to cut that fat. We have to cut that fat, and we have to pay the ADAs who are in court to keep us safe. Now, the way I plan on doing it is by shrinking the court's dockets, by shrinking the bloat of the criminal justice system. There are one 40-person pod costs each and every one of you taxpayers $2.75 million just to watch those people in jail. What I plan on doing is reducing the number of cases that are in court and handling them through diversion and intervention so that we don't have mental health crises and addiction issues being handled in courtrooms, but handled inside of the DA's office, in the diversion unit, returning money to City Hall. I am the only candidate who will be able to return money to City Hall on day 100.
Thank you, Councilmember. And one more regular question. No matter who is elected, you will be the first black elected DA since 2003. How will that play a role in your leadership and staffing choices in as diverse of a city as New Orleans? I'm going to start with Judge Kiva Landry.
So if I am elected, I would be the first black female elected district attorney in New Orleans, and that is what I want to do. And the role that will play is that it would show, I think, that, I think it would help to negate a lot of these false narratives that as a woman elected district attorney or as a woman candidate, I could not stand on my own experience, my own leadership skills to run this office. But more importantly, my plans are to run an office that employees that are reflective of the New Orleans community. And so that means that we will actively select and actively recruit people who want to operate with integrity, with honesty, with transparency, to run the district attorney's office and the culture that we need to build trust in the New Orleans community.
Thank you. Judge Reed?
Well, you certainly can't go in and start firing folks unfairly just based upon race, sexual orientation, or gender. But the goal would be to have a goal of having a district attorney's office that's reflective of the diverse community in which we live in. But you also want you want trained people. We want people who are committed and dedicated to the operation of the office. I plan to have a staff that's committed to the office, willing to work after 5 o'clock, willing to work on the weekend on crime prevention initiatives. And you have to have a love of the community to want to do that. So I think that having programs and showing folks what you expect of them, if they don't want to join in that program and participate, they're going to leave voluntarily. So we plan to have a very aggressive approach in terms of dealing with the community and working with the community and being involved in the community.
Thank you, Judge. Council member?
Number one, as a black man, I have been stopped and I have been profiled by the police when I'm not wearing a suit, sometimes when I am wearing a suit, right here in the city of New Orleans. So I know what that's like. I know about the implicit bias that exists in the NOPD and has always existed in the DA's office. So I will make sure that from day one, any ADA that stays, any staff member, any investigator will be trained yearly on implicit bias. So that they recognize it in the screening process, so they recognize it when and how they are working out deals, so that they do not look at a kid from Newman differently than they look at a kid from 35. So what I'm going to bring is my background to make sure that I understand that the folks working in the DA's office should know how to pronounce Chapatulas, right? They should know where streets are in this community. And to date, that's not really the case. I mean, you would think that the DA's office was a St. Tammany Parish DA's office if you look at whether or not it truly reflects our community. I'll make sure that it finally does.
Thank you, Councilman. For the record, I was told when I first moved to New Orleans to get names of streets right because you will get an email. And I've gotten several, and I've made a valiant effort to fix that. Thank you very much. Judge Hunter, same question.
Yeah, two things. Number one, we're going to have implicit bias training, as I stated earlier. But the second thing, we're going to hire people from the African-American community, the Latinx community. We're going to reach out to the Asian community and the LGBTQ community as well. And make sure we hire staff and attorneys that reflect the diversity of the city of New Orleans. I mean, we cannot have that trust or that integrity in the office unless we have people there that represent the city, but also represent the policy that's going to be with the district attorney's office as well. And so we're going to reach out. We're going to make sure we hire the best, the brightest, and the most qualified.
Thank you. That concludes the regular questions. The following questions are yes or no questions. Quick round questions. Okay. And we will start with Councilmember Jason Williams. Yes or no, do you support bail reform in Orleans Parish?
Yes, absolutely.
Judge Reed, do you support bail reform?
Yes, I do. This is long overdue.
Judge Kiva, do you support bail reform?
Yes.
Judge Hunter, do you support bail reform?
Yes.
Thank you. Next question. If elected, will you support community programming and social services aimed at providing alternatives to incarceration? Starting with you, Judge Reed.
As I told you before, yes, I will.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, I will.
Judge Hunter.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Judge Kiva Landrum.
Yes.
And one more hot seat question. If elected, do you plan on being more transparent with the public on DA's office policies, budgets, cases dealing with police misconduct, and diversion programs? Judge Kiva Landrum.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Judge Hunter.
Yes.
And Judge Reed.
Yes.
Okay, we are almost toward the end. One more question, and this is not a yes or no question. This is actually speaking directly to the people who are watching right now. Stress the importance of being a part of not just this election season, but being a part of the election process on a regular basis and how it can impact their neighborhoods and their communities. We're going to start with Judge Hunter.
One of the things that I'm going to do once I become district attorney is not just involve myself in the courtroom, but involved in the community as well. Because again, unless you have that trust within the community, you won't receive information on a case, to solve a case, to make an arrest, to present to a judge or jury. And so one of the things I'm going to do once I become DA, involved in the community, is adopt a nonprofit or a homeless shelter, and make sure that our office is involved with providing whatever services or volunteer services we can. Because again, it's not just about processing the case. It's not about a case number, but it's getting involved in the community. And once you have that involvement in the community, you prevent those issues of Ferguson and George Floyd. But again, it also has to be involved with the NOPD as well. And when I was in the urban squad, that's what we were. We were a community policing organization, a unit. And so it has to be the NOPD along with the district attorney's office to, again, be involved in the community, regain that trust in the community in order for all of us to be safer.
Thank you. Judge Kiva?
Can you repeat the question for me, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just stress to the public who is watching tonight's live stream the importance of being a part of the election process.
So, I mean, at this point in time in our society, voting is probably one of the most important things that we can do. I was just having a conversation with someone today about whether or not, people intend to vote on our local elections. It is probably the most important to vote in our national elections. I believe that the decisions that will occur will have long-standing implications in not just our lives, but in the lives of, the next generation. And these may be decisions that will, in some ways, we may not be able to change for a long time. And so it is just extremely important for everyone, in my opinion, to know how our vote matters, how decisions matter. We have the potential to have another Supreme Court justice in the United States, and so those decisions really, fall downstream and completely impact our lives. And so whether or not it is just, not just on local elections, but it is the most important for us to vote even on the national level, because each and every decision makes a difference in how we operate.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Reed, same question.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Just stress to the public at home watching on live stream the importance of being a part of the election process.
Very important, but not only the election process, but also to be involved in the community, be a watchdog over your public dollars to see how these various offices are operating, come out to the city council meetings, come out to the community meetings, ask hard questions of your district attorney. You know, if someone is killed in your community and you can't get a straight answer, don't allow your DA to hide behind a grand jury and say, oh, I put it before the grand jury and there was no indictment, so that's it. You know, force their hand to take some action to deliver justice to you and to your community. It's your tax dollars. If you make no demands, you will get no results. And that's the biggest thing that I would like to see on a part of our community, is to be more actively involved with our elected officials and our public offices so that we can get a better delivery of services to you, to our community, that would enhance the quality of life in your community and our city.
Thank you, Judge. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you for that question, Sherman. It's an important one. The mask I wear says vote. Doesn't say vote for Arthur Hunter, doesn't say vote for Kiva Landrum, doesn't say vote for Jason. It says just vote, because people have died in this country because we didn't have a person at the head in the White House to press the case that was important to the people of America, and we made false steps and people have died. People have died at the hands of police because district attorneys have not been making better police officers. They have been sitting back and being neutral in the face of oppression. So voting saves lives and changes lives. It is important, East Coast, West Coast, up and down ballot, that we get engaged so that we can, for once, truly live the full promise of Dr. King, because we have not yet. So whether you vote for anybody at this table, I'm encouraging you to vote, because it is important, because it can change your existence and will for sure change the existence of our children.
Thank you. We have 8 minutes left in this conversation. We will now begin with the candidates' 2-minute closing statements, if you could adjust the time. Beginning with former Judge Morris Reed. You have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
You know, I gave you 8 cases where citizens had been killed in this city by police officers, serial killers on our police department. Stephen Rebo, I mentioned, killed a decorated sergeant who served in Vietnam, was working a regular job at Krauss Department Store, went on a lunch break and was shot and killed in the 200 block of Bourbon Street by a racist cop, Stephen Rebo. A couple of years later, Stephen Rebo comes up on the scene again. He's in the bedroom of Sherry Lynn Singleton, 26-year-old mother, 6 months pregnant. He shoots her with a shotgun and a .45, blows her head off. Stephen Rebo, was he jailed for it? Was he prosecuted for it? No. That was one of the 8 cases that the district attorney's office did nothing, took no action, hid behind a grand jury and said we can't get an indictment. We should not have situations like the Danziger Bridge case where our citizens escaping floodwaters are shot down and murdered on a bridge in our community, and nobody does anything in the DA's office to bring the murderous cops to justice. We cannot allow the district attorney's office to seek refuge behind the cloak of the grand jury and say my hands are tied. I will not be that type of district attorney in this city. I will be a transparent district attorney. I will be very aggressive in protecting the rights of all citizens, and I will not tolerate police brutality. I will not tolerate serial murderous cops in our community. Thank you very much for considering me.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Hunter, 2 minutes.
There's a reason why we're here this evening. We have an opportunity on Election Day to change the way the District Attorney's Office has operated for the last 50 years. And we need to realize that the District Attorney is actually the leader of the criminal justice system. And so we want a District Attorney that's going to do the right thing, that's going to be fair, and that's going to be involved in the community. It's not about anyone up here, but it's about you and what kind of criminal justice system we actually want to live under. Do we want to live under a criminal justice system that's fair or unjust, one that's effective or chaotic, one that's right or wrong? And I would hope in my 23 years as a judge and being a former New Orleans police officer that I was fair, I did the right thing, and I did things to make the city safer. And so it's important. It's important on Election Day, as we say there, that we get out to vote and that we determine, again, what kind of criminal justice system we actually want to live under.
Thank you very much. Judge Kiva Landrum, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank Franklin Avenue for hosting us, the Links of New Orleans, the Men of Alpha Phi Alpha, and the Senior Voters Caucus, and WBOK for hosting this event this evening. You know, I imagine and want to reimagine a criminal justice system that advances public safety and looks out for the victims and women and violent crime families and families who've suffered violent crime in New Orleans. I've dedicated my life to public service in our city. As a former district attorney and judge, what I know is that I've built partnerships with the stakeholders in the criminal justice system so that we can move forward and reform our criminal justice system here in New Orleans. I am the only candidate in this race that has worked with victims, survivors, and their families to navigate through this system at Tulane and Broad. I am the only candidate in this race that has built partnerships with local, national, and state-level organizations so that we can accomplish criminal justice reform in our city. What I can tell you is this. This is a critical time for us to make very, very, very critical progress. I have stepped up before during critical times, and I am going to step up again to make sure that we can move this office forward. It is not just about having a vision for what you can do. It is about experience, proven leadership to implement it. I have implemented those things before, and I am going to do them again as your next district attorney. So I'm asking for your vote, your support, and your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Councilmember Williams, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Sherman, and thank you to Pastor Luda for hosting today. It's good to be in church. It's good to be in my church. Reform is not just a word. It's not enough. I think, Sherman, you asked the question. You said, will you support bail reform? Yes, I'll support bail reform. Will you support mental health intervention for juveniles? Yes, I'll support it. But will you fight for it? That is what this election is about. And I'm sorry, Arthur Hunter, it's not about the people out there. This is about the choices that the next DA is going to make. And the next DA has to be brave enough and courageous enough to speak out against injustice. It's a scary proposition. I understand why judges sat quietly while DA Canizero wanted to put people in jail with a bogus subpoena. Because it's scary to bring change. It is scary to speak out against power, against a man who has a 75% approval rating when you speak out against. It can even put a target on your back. But that is why people have been marching in the street, not because they want some change, not because they want somebody to imagine a new system. They want someone who is going to fight for them, one, to keep them safe, and one, to not let their children get abused under the guise of safety. This is a critical juncture. We're going to be stuck with the choice we make for the next 6 years. And it's not enough to say, I've been there before. You have to ask the question, what did you do when you were there? And we know for a fact that one person was there who was trained under Harry Connick and put forth the same policies he taught her the whole time he was there. We also know that not a single juvenile has been transferred back to juvenile jail from the adult jail that the judges took him from. So we know that choices have been made. Ask yourself, who do you want in this position? Someone who is willing to stand up, someone who is willing to speak out, or someone who is going to sit by quietly when injustices are occurring?
Thank you, Councilmember. Well, thanks to each of you participating tonight. We look forward to this election and supporting the next DA for the parish of New Orleans. We will take a 10-minute break in preparation for the Louisiana Supreme Court District 7 candidates conversation. So for those at home, don't go anywhere. We'll take a quick break. Thank you.
Founded on the commitment to friendship and service, the Links Incorporated was established in 1946 by Margaret Hawkins and Sarah Scott in Philadelphia. In 1957, its New Orleans chapter was established.
The New Orleans chapter of Links was the first chapter that was founded in New Orleans. We had, and still do have, 4 facets that we worked on: the arts, the services to youth, national trends and services, and international trends and services. My mother was a charter member, so I admire these women for some of the things that they did. I remember one thing in particular. They raised money for linens, sheets, and towels for the Gus homes, senior citizens apartment that was built by the federal government. I'm Sybil Morial. I joined the New Orleans chapter of Links in 1967. We were making an impact, Black women reaching out to enrich lives.
When Links was formed, this was a segregated community. This was a country that was segregated. Many of the interests that Black women had, they were not allowed to pursue. Links set out to make available some of these things that were not part of our community, and to expose the women to things that they wouldn't, under ordinary circumstances, take part in.
You were distinguished in the community if you belonged to something like the Links. Well, a thing that we took pride in was Links was really like a sisterly organization. You worked together and you did things with and for each other, and able to give back to the community.
To care for people in the community who need care. That's the most important part of that relationship. We used to stage our citywide health fair. We went into the community in order to see that health was afforded to people who needed it. It is our responsibility, and we are fulfilling that responsibility.
They get out in the total community and make a big difference. I'm glad that I joined them. It is a dynamite group. But today, more than ever, through the years in this chapter, they had such powerful women. You have doctors, you have lawyers, you have judges, powerful women. That's so important for African American women.
Since its inception in 1957, the New Orleans chapter of the Links Incorporated has grown to include 53 active members and 14 alumni members, still committed to the original mission.
This program year, we held our 29th annual Spelling Bee. We registered over 200 high school seniors for voter registration. Through international trends and services, we assembled 70 hygiene packs for our school in Jamaica, the Watford Primary School. Through Health and Human Services, we provided information about hepatitis C for over 1,000 residents in the New Orleans area. We also hosted our annual Childhood Obesity and Awareness Day. The arts facet worked with young artists at a local elementary school to paint a canvas that will be displayed at this year's Jazz Fest. Also, we work with art students at a local HBCU whose artwork will be displayed at White Linen Night in partnership with Ogden Museum. This year, we are honored to award 5 deserving students scholarships in the amount of $2,000 each. This is what the Links is about. Over 60 years, the New Orleans chapter of the Links Incorporated has built a legacy that we are proud of, and we continue to move forward through friendship and service.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for all that you're doing to help everyone in this country make their voices heard in this year's election and in every election. Your work has never been more important. From the ongoing pandemic to the passion and protests we've seen for racial and social justice, it's clear that we're in the middle of a big moment in this country. And that means we need leadership that honestly reflects who we are and what we stand for. Our job between now and November is to make sure everyone we know understands that the power to make change rests on our ability to cast a vote. Fair and safe voting is going to be more important than ever this year. And that's why When We All Vote is fighting to expand vote by mail, in-person early voting, and online voter registration. Now, I'm going to be honest. We're really going to need your help to make these efforts a success. Luckily, the first step is an easy one. Just spread the word. Make sure your friends, families, and communities are registered, know their rights, and are fully prepared to vote by mail this year or vote early in person. So, go to whenweallvote.org to find out more and get yourselves, your families, and your friends ready to make their voices heard. Let's get more folks across the country trained with the tools, the resources, and the information they'll need to vote, because this election couldn't be more important.
People keep telling me to vote, but I really don't see why.
I'm an adult. Don't tell me what to care about.
I've always been comfortable living with other people's decisions.
Oh, my parents got this covered. They're voting, and we've never disagreed.
If my candidate isn't perfect, then I'd just rather not.
It is literally impossible for one person to make a difference. Unless you're like a doctor or Beyonce or something.
Well, I'm not gonna go out. I'm still quarantining.
Mail in. Like, mail?
Like snail mail?
Does that mean I have to lick it?
Where do you put the stamp?
You know, this is America, and I have the right and the freedom to choose not to choose who's in charge of America.
It's my right as an American. I know this.
I already know who my state is going to choose, so what's the point?
It's raining.
Yeah, I don't know if today's a good day for that.
I'm just not that into politics.
Leave me alone.
I'm really saying something by not doing anything.
It's really gonna be decided by the Illuminati anyway.
Look, I know I'm on the right side of history. I don't feel like I really need to be a part of history. Does that make sense?
Yo, millennials make up roughly 1/3 of voting eligible Americans.
But less than half of us voted in 2016.
Oh my God, really?
I'm not great at math, but that's not good.
Yeah.
It's never been more important to fight for what you believe in.
It's time to show up.
Take 2 minutes to register online to vote today.
And then, actually vote.
No more excuses.
No more.
It's our turn.
It's our turn.
Our turn.
Our turn.
I gave a little blood on that bridge. I can never, ever forget people that I knew, people that I marched with, people that I worked with, people that I love being abused, being beaten. They never became bitter or hostile. They kept the faith. And we got the voting rights act. We changed America forever.
Every American citizen must have an equal right to vote.
In my heart of hearts, I believe we have a moral responsibility to restore access for all of our citizens who desire to participate in the democratic process.
You want to honor John? Let's honor him by revitalizing the law that he was willing to die for.
Call Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Michelle.
Hey, Lin, are you registered to vote?
Of course. I am not throwing away my opportunity to make my voice heard this November.
If we really want our voices to be heard, we need to vote in every election, not just for president, but for every office, school board, state house, senate, all of them. Can you help me get people registered?
Okay, I'm already on it.
Well, keep up the good work.
Let's see who else we can get on this.
Yo, Lynn, what up?
Hey, Chris, we're looking to field a full team to make sure every American casts their ballot this November. It's real easy from your phone or tablet to get the info you need to vote. Also, Michelle said so.
Well, I'm on it. There's no off season for getting out to vote. Call Janelle.
No, not now. I'm registering voters. Hey, take this. 4 million Americans turn 18 this year. That's huge. And we need every last one of them to register and vote. Because let's be real. It's going to be the young people of this generation that will change the world.
It's time. Our nation requires it. Our democracy in the country we love requires our attention, voice, and participation.
When we vote, we prove that we are a democracy with a government of the people and by the people.
So every community we visit, it's important for them to know they can really make a difference if they go and vote in every election.
Absolutely.
So we're asking for your help. Help us start a conversation across America about being active participants in our most basic American responsibility, voting. Talk to your friends and family and neighbors. Tell them your hopes and dreams for your family, your community, and our country. When we all vote, we determine our future.
For those who are just joining us tonight, welcome to Justice for New Orleans. This is an intimate conversation with some of our candidates. I'm Sherman DeSalle of WDSU and your moderator this evening. This event is hosted by Franklin Avenue Baptist Church, sponsored by the Sigma Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Senior Voters Caucus, the New Orleans chapter of Links Incorporated, and WBOK. We would now like to welcome our candidates for the Louisiana Supreme Court District 7 race. Just to reiterate and for clarity, this is not an endorsement of any candidate's platform, but rather an open conversation about the issues facing our area. As such, we are asking candidates to be respectful of the sanctuary, each other, and the office that you seek, and to conform with the city's mandatory mask mandate. We ask that each candidate, when not speaking, wear their mask as well as our guests. And everyone in the sanctuary, for the record, is following that mask mandate. Each candidate will be given an opportunity to give an opening statement, answer questions prepared by myself, answer what we refer to at WDSU as hot seat questions, and finally give a closing statement. There will be 1 minute to give your opening statement tonight and to answer the questions. The hot seat questions will require a yes or no answer only. For the closing statement, 2 minutes will be allowed. The timekeeper seated in front of you, he will display the amount of time remaining for your answer at the 60-second, 30-second, and 15-second mark. So please be mindful of your time tonight. We will now begin our conversation with the candidates for Louisiana Supreme Court District 7. Our candidates this evening are retired Civil District Court Judge Piper Griffin. What's that? Oh, not retired. I will now have to fire the writer. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal Judge Sandra Jenkins and Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal Judge Terry Love. Thank you for coming tonight. We'll begin with our opening statements by Judge Griffin, followed by Judges Jenkins and Love, respectively. And after each, I will start beginning with the questions after you give your opening statements. Judge Griffin?
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Piper Griffin, and I am a graduate of Xavier Prep, University of Notre Dame, and LSU Law School. I've had the privilege and honor of serving as a Civil District Court judge for the past almost 20 years. And as an active participant in the judiciary, what I realize is that who is the next Supreme Court justice matters. The Supreme Court is the highest branch of our third branch of government. It is leadership, it is management. And for me, it is important that the next Supreme Court justice not only be able to write opinions, and what I will tell you is that all of us sitting at this table, we're qualified to write the opinions that the Supreme Court writes. The issue is who has the leadership and the management skills necessary to not only write the opinions, but to be able to do that other part of the Supreme Court's work. I submit to you that I am that person, that I have demonstrated leadership, involvement in the judiciary, such that I am qualified to be the next Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge, who is not retired, for the record. Judge Jenkins.
Good evening. First, thank you to Pastor Luter and the Franklin Avenue family and all the co-sponsors for allowing us to come before you tonight. I am Sandra Cabrina Jenkins. I currently serve on the Louisiana 4th Circuit Court of Appeal. I've been there for the past 8 years. 23 years before I was elected, I was a practitioner, and I started off as an assistant district attorney in Orleans Parish. I stayed there 3 years, and I was able to work my way up into the ranks of being a senior trial assistant where I tried many felony cases. I also began working for the court that I now sit as a staff attorney for 5 years. And after that, I went on my own and I began a solo practice. And the majority of my practice area was as a criminal defense attorney. And I agree with Judge Griffin that it is very important who is our next Supreme Court justice. And I offer to you that I bring diversity to the court because of the experience that I will bring to the court that currently is not on our court now. Thank you.
You have reached your time. Judge Love.
Well, good evening, and I'd also like to thank the Franklin Avenue Baptist family for allowing us here this evening and our other guests. I am Judge Terry Love, and I have had the privilege and honor of serving in this community as a judge for the past 25 years. 5 years as a trial court judge and 20 years as an appellate court judge, having authored over 700 appellate opinions and addressed over 1,500 criminal interlocutory matters. But more important, I am a student of the law. Upon my election to the 4th Circuit, I returned to law school to obtain a degree in the judicial process, which focuses on the appellate process. And I believe my experience as a jurist, my quest for lifelong learning of the law uniquely prepares me to be the next justice on the Louisiana Supreme Court. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going into our regular round of questions. Question number one. We've heard the phrase criminal justice reform for the last couple of years. What does that mean to you? We'll start with Judge Jenkins.
Criminal justice reform means that all stakeholders have to actually take a look at the systems under which they currently operate. A lot of times we find ourselves in situations where we are perpetuating those things that are oppressive, or those things or systems and customs that are harming our community. And one of the greatest examples is our cash bail bond system. If you look at the history and go all the way back to slavery, actually, and look at why persons may have been arrested, why persons may have had to have paid a bond, it had to do with the fact that once slavery ended, there were no workers, there was no labor, so there were the most minuscule charges that were brought against a person where they had to stay in jail for a time period, and if they could pay it, they could get out, but for the most part, they could not. So we have to first acknowledge and look at the system from under which we are working as a judiciary.
Thank you. Judge Love, same question.
Criminal justice reform means to me equality under the law, that everyone who appears in a court setting will be treated equally and the same. Recently, our state went through a criminal justice reform process, and that process was begun by the legislature when a committee was created that was composed of all of the stakeholders from the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. I think that committee should be reopened. We should look at and make sure that we can come up with processes, whereas when someone appears in court, that they are treated the same whether they are from St. Charles Avenue or from St. Claude Avenue.
Thank you very much. Judge Griffin, same question.
Criminal justice reforms means that we, as a state, need to look at every level of the justice system and ensure that justice is in fact being done. One of the problems we have is a definition of justice. And the definition of justice needs to be that everyone, as Judge Love said, is treated equally. But equality doesn't simply mean looking at a person the same, but understanding and appreciating why things happen, why people are arrested, why they commit the crimes, whether or not we have in place systems that address the why, and whether or not we can, when a person is a first offender, give them an opportunity to fix the why. The reform has to be holistic, it has to be real, and it has to be with every stakeholder appreciating that they have, as they say, skin in the game. That they have to understand that it is necessary that change occurs, and they have to volunteer or be told to be that change agent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question number 2 tonight. We'll start with Judge Love. If elected, how will you work to assure that our state's highest court provides a more equal justice system, especially for Black Americans who feel as if their voices are still not being heard?
Well, I think that pretty much starts with where I ended the first question. I would like to see us reconstitute. There was great work done with the last Criminal Justice Reform Act. Now, we removed, I think we were first in incarceration. I think we came down second. Now understand we're back first because Oregon made some changes in theirs. I think that it is incumbent upon the Supreme Court to work with all of the stakeholders. You have to remember the judiciary is there to interpret the law. And I think that if we put together the right task force and the right committees and we look at whether there needs to be changes in the law, because I think Judge Griffin is correct. There is a question about the why. But I think in order for us to do that, we need all of the stakeholders involved, and we need to look at whether there should be changes in the laws and changes in the procedure. And as a Supreme Court justice, the role that we can play is putting together those and working with the legislature in creating those task forces and coming up with those conclusions and solutions.
Thank you. Judge Griffin, same question.
One of the things that we have to holistically do is make sure that the courts are equipped with what they need to understand and appreciate how to effectuate change. Right now, we're electing, there are about 260 district court judges, so every district court judge in the state of Louisiana was up for re-election, and that's where the change occurs. We have to make sure that these new judges understand and appreciate implicit bias, that they understand and appreciate the need for the reform, that they understand and are equipped with the knowledge necessary. We also have to appreciate and understand that courts have to have alternatives to incarceration. They have to have the ability to give people an opportunity to go to mental health courts, to go to drug courts, to treat the underlying illnesses. We have to be prepared as a Supreme Court to equip the system, the third branch of government, with what it needs in order for the people who represent that system to make the changes necessary for us to be able to say that the Justice Reinvestment Task Force job continues.
Thank you.
And that we're including the reduction of incarceration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Jenkins, same
Can you
question.
repeat the question so
Sure.
I make sure
No
I
problem.
have clarity?
If elected, how will you work to assure that our state's highest court provides a more equal justice system, especially for Black Americans who feel as if their voices are still not being heard?
I think one of the things that I hear, not just on the campaign trail, but over the years as a defense attorney, is that the public is not trusting of the judiciary. And I think one of the first things that needs to happen is we as the court need to make efforts to educate the public on the process, because when there is no knowledge or people feel like they're in darkness as to what's going on, then we don't have the public confidence. And when we don't have a public confidence in a system, then that's when we have the turmoil that we're seeing in the streets today of people making demands, which are fine to make those demands, but until you have the community coming together, until you have those that were formerly incarcerated, those that have been released and are fighting to make sure that they are citizens in our community that can partake once again, then we will have a system where all of us will experience justice.
Thank you. Next question. Give a good example on a state Supreme Court level that changed Louisiana for the better. Give a good example on a state Supreme Court level that changed Louisiana for the better, something that resonates with you. And this is to make sure that our public understands the magnitude of your role in state Supreme Court. We'll start with Judge Griffin.
And I'm not sure if you're going to like my answer, but the selection of and the acknowledgement that Chief Justice Burnett Joshua Johnson had the right to be the next and the current Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I happen to be an active member of the Louisiana Judicial Council, NBA, and on the executive committee. And one of the biggest fights that we as African Americans had was the acknowledgement that that seat, when it was created, was in fact a seat on the Supreme Court. And I say that because with the acknowledgement of Chief Justice Johnson, the conversations on the Supreme Court changed. Her priorities were different from the priorities of prior Chief Justices. And when I say that, the Justice Reinvestment Task Force, that was her baby. She knew that we were #1 in incarceration, and she wanted to make sure that the #1 status ended. She has made an effort to make sure that the courts have been get information on domestic violence, get information on mental health courts, that there is training on implicit bias. And that only changed because our chief changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Griffin. Judge Jenkins, same question.
I will start off by acknowledging that our Louisiana Supreme Court is very conservative. We have 7 justices, and as Judge Griffin just said, our Chief Justice, she's the only Black person on the court, only woman on the court. The rest, the other 6, are white males. And that's why I said it matters who's on the Supreme Court. It's not about gender, it's not about race, it's what experience you bring with you. So I say all that to say the case that I find that is impactful most recently on Louisiana is the U.S. Supreme Court case that forced the hand of Louisiana Supreme Court to acknowledge a racist and unconstitutional practice of non-unanimous jury verdicts. It was the U.S. Supreme Court that told Louisiana, one of the last 2 states that allowed for a person to be convicted without a unanimous jury, to say, this is unconstitutional. So now our Supreme Court, over the last several months, have been sending cases back to the 4th Circuit, and we are addressing those cases and remanding to the trial court because it's declared unconstitutional.
Thank you very much. Judge Love, same question.
Well, I'm approach it from a different standard. I think when Judge Griffin spoke about the chiefs, that was excellent, but I was under the impression you were saying our Supreme Court, because that was the federal court that addressed that. Were you referring to our Supreme Court? And I agree with Judge Jenkins as it relates to Ramos, but the case I'm going to take is something that was impactful in a negative way. And I think it shows what we must always look for. One of the greatest travesties here after Katrina was when all of our public school teachers were terminated. There was a class action created, which our court affirmed. The trial court conducted hearings and made a ruling that those teachers were improperly terminated. It came to the 4th Circuit, it was affirmed. The Supreme Court reversed. Our teachers here were treated totally different from any teachers in this state after Katrina. And that was a travesty. And that's where I want to show that our Supreme Court plays a role in our lives. And we've got to be prepared to address those type of issues to ensure that everyone receives equal justice under the law.
Thank you, Judge. Next question, and we'll start with Judge Jenkins on this one. Your thoughts on the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the importance of finding the right person to fill her now vacant seat in the middle of a hotly contested presidential election. I tell you what, set that to about 1:45 because I feel like we're gonna need it.
Yes, and me, like everyone else, I'm sure was devastated when we heard about the death of Justice Ginsburg. And what I do love about her writing, I love about her tenacity as a justice, is that she was fearless in that she did not care about what her colleagues per se thought about her. And I say that because of a quote that I really do like about dissent. And she says, and I'm paraphrasing, that a dissent does not mean that I'm trying to tell the rest of the court that you're wrong. A dissent is written for the future because over time things change. And she's written a lot of strong dissents, and she's known for her fight for women's rights. So I'm saddened to think that about the hypocrisy of the Senate right now and pushing for a nomination when at the end of President Barack Obama's term, you know, that was not allowed, and they made the rule, or they just blocked the opportunity even over a year out for him to be able to make that nomination. And I teach a judicial process at Xavier University, and that's one of the things that we talked about. And the fact that when a justice or a judge is appointed, it's not supposed to be about their political ideology. And I will say proudly, as a jurist, that lately the U.S. Supreme Court has been showing us that it doesn't matter who appointed them as a justice, that they are following the rule of law and that they can be open. So it's going to be extremely important who we get there, but I do have hope that it's going to be a person that can almost follow her footsteps, hopefully.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Love, same question.
Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge her great work. She was a true champion for justice. But at this point, that's a matter that's going to be litigated in the Congress and with the president. But what I like and what I want to stress here that I think is the most important for us to keep in mind, that we here in this state have the right to choose our Supreme Court justice by vote. And that's something that, you know, when I was thinking about the process and what all was going on, that really resonated with me, that we have that right. Now it's tied, when you think about it, to 100 people, mostly men, making that decision that will impact the lives of so many Americans for years. We don't know who's going to be nominated. We don't know who's going to be approved. But what we do know we need to do is, we all know that we need to vote and be engaged in the process. And I think Judge Jenkins hit on something earlier that has really been one of my concerns with the entire process, is that we need to increase our educational level relative to law and civics. I have been certified through the Louisiana State Bar to teach civics to adults. I think there are so many people who do not understand the process. You know, we're out running for the Supreme Court. I've had people talk to me about divorces. I've had people talk to me about, do you have to get approved? And I really think that there will be much more respect for the system if there was a greater education for our young people and so are not so young. There are quite a few people I run across who are not so young who don't understand the process. So I do think education is crucial.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Griffin, same question.
Sure. I think all of us acknowledge the place in history that Ruth Bader Ginsburg has. She was phenomenal. She was tenacious. She was courageous. She was what they call notorious. And she was not just notorious for a bad thing, but she was notorious because she was consistent in her fight for the equality of all people, for her need to make sure that everybody's rights be protected. And Judge Jenkins said something that I'm concerned about. She specifically said over time things change. And that's the problem and the concern that we as African Americans and we that have previously been disenfranchised should have and be concerned about as we look at the process of the replacement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Because to the extent that we know that every case that has been rendered by the Supreme Court for the last few years, with rare exception, have gone and been decided by one vote. Now that one vote is up for grabs. And the question becomes whether we can get someone in that position who recognizes and appreciates the rights and the value that every person in this country has. And that is my concern. You asked what my concern was, that is it. I am concerned about the process, I'm concerned about who replaces, but I'm concerned because as a person who knows, appreciates, and understands that the dissents that Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote will never probably become law if her voice is no longer there. Unless we can get someone who is an even balance or someone who at least appreciates and understands the conversations that she was willing to have as she tried to get the court to understand and appreciate the need to protect the rights of all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last regular question of the night. We'll start with Judge Love. All three of you have, at one point in time tonight, spoke about this briefly, but for the people at home, talk about the importance of this seat that you are running for being filled by the right candidate. Judge Love.
Well, first of all, when you look at the court and the role that the court plays in our society, the Supreme Court was constitutionally created, and it must address and issue clear pronouncements of the law. But it is also the hub of judicial administration. I believe to be a good justice, you must have and you must truly understand the appellate process. The appellate process requires an exchange between your colleagues, and it requires that you reach a conclusion and you come to a resolution of a matter. And I believe to be a good justice, you must have that experience. Second of all, as the hub of judicial administration, you have a responsibility to regulate the practice of law, you supervise the judges, you have an administrative staff to assist you with those responsibilities. But the utmost important thing is the Supreme Court is the ultimate ensurer of justice. That's why you're called a justice. And you must be able to issue opinions or dissent that will ensure that there is equality for all under the law.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Griffin, same question.
As the third branch of government, the Supreme Court manages the entire judicial system. It's important that we get someone in that position who, as has been said, can write clear and concise opinions, be they opinions that, in fact, go with your brethren, or opinions that dissent and will hopefully at some point be looked upon favorably as we look in the future. The reality is that as the Supreme Court manages the judiciary, it must manage every court, it must manage every lawyer, it must also manage the entire legal system. And so whoever gets there needs to have leadership qualities that have been demonstrated. needs to have administrative qualities that have been demonstrated, needs to understand and to appreciate what the court does, how it does it, and the necessity that you work with your colleagues, those other members of the Supreme Court, and hopefully because of the work that you've done with them, they respect you and they're willing to have perhaps listen to you and also agree with you on opinions. The Supreme Court is currently 6 men, 1 woman. And so this person, we would clearly be another African-American female, but it needs to be someone who is scholarly, who is ethical, and who's prepared to take on the role as Associate Justice.
Thank you very much. That concludes our regular questions. Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. I agree with Judge Love and Judge Piper Griffin. And what I want to concentrate on is what happens in conference. We talked about we have to educate. And I believe that opinions are the most critical part of the court's job as the Louisiana Supreme Court because it affects the livelihood. Yes, administration is important. Yes, leadership. We all have that. We're all judges. We've been duly elected and we have done well as judges. However, when we're sitting in conference after we've heard oral argument or after we have read the briefs and we've done the research, our decision-making, our deliberation comes into play. And with deliberation comes your experience. And that's my emphasis and focus. Not that these two judges cannot do the job. The difference between us is what I bring to the table, which is my background as a criminal defense attorney, my background as a prosecutor. Traditionally, Supreme Court justices are elected from the civil bench or civil practice. And I'm the only one that is at this table that doesn't bring that traditional experience. It doesn't make sense to continue to stack the Supreme Court with the same experience that it historically has had when the opportunity has arisen for my experience to be at the table and to assist with a different type of deliberation that we don't see right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And pardon me for skipping you earlier. Okay, now we're going to go into our hot seat questions, which are yes or no questions only. Okay? There are 3 of them tonight. We'll start with Judge Love. Question number 1, do you support implicit bias training for those in the judicial system, including lawyers and judges?
Yes.
Judge Jenkins?
Yes.
Judge Griffin?
Yes.
Number 2, starting with Judge Jenkins, do you support the state Supreme Court's recent decision to allow this year's law school graduates to take their bar exams remotely with open book access due to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes.
Judge Griffin?
Yes.
Judge Love?
Yes.
Number 3, starting with Judge Griffin, will you continue the work done on criminal justice reform started by Chief Justice Bernadette Johnson?
Yes.
Judge Love?
Yes.
Judge Jenkins?
Yes.
All right. We will now begin with the candidates' 2-minute closing statements, and we'll start with Judge Love, followed by Judge Jenkins and Judge Griffin.
Again, I would like to thank our host tonight for this opportunity to be here and discuss our candidacy. As I indicated, I have 25 years of judicial experience. The Supreme Court has the ultimate responsibility of ensuring justice, and the work of the Supreme Court requires someone who has that appellate experience, who understands the appellate process. And I have sought all of the extensive training to be an appellate court judge. But more importantly, the Supreme Court has a responsibility to ensure that justice is served. And one of my main administrative goals will be to ensure that opinions and all matters are handled timely in our court system. For there to be confidence in the court system, there must be timely and just resolution of all matters. And I believe that's an area where we can use improvement in our system. Further, I would like to increase the educational role of the Supreme Court, the educational role for our attorneys, for our judges, and for the community to ensure that everyone in this community is familiar with the role of the court. But more importantly, in that the court must provide equal justice under the law, I believe that justice, true justice, is mercy and compassion for one another. And that will be my guiding force as your next Supreme Court Justice. I thank you.
Thank you, Judge Love. Judge Jenkins, 2 minutes.
I look forward to the opportunity to serve as the next Louisiana Supreme Court Justice. 31 years ago, I graduated from Southern University Law Center, and that's when my preparation began. This is not something that I woke up one day and said, I think I want to be a Supreme Court Justice. It's been ongoing for years. I attended my first law school class when I was in high school. Not that I was brilliant, it was that my mother worked at the law center. I hung around after school. I begged to go to class, went to a criminal law class, and I was hooked at that point. But I say all that to say that the opportunity after 26 years of great service by Chief Justice Johnson is ending on December 31st. And the opportunity that I have been preparing for as a former prosecutor, as a former criminal defense attorney, as a former appellate counsel, as a former attorney that volunteered time for veterans and became an accredited VA representative to help veterans with their claims. I am a person that has always been involved in the community. I strongly believe in behavioral health courts. Right now, we are seeing a horrific epidemic with the opiate crisis, and we've always had crisis in our communities with drugs, but now it's affecting everyone, so there is a greater emphasis, which is a blessing. But we have to figure out ways how not to criminalize addiction. We have to figure out ways how not to separate families when it comes to termination of parental rights. And one of the issues, or the underlying issues, is the inability of a parent to take care of their child because of an addiction. So I believe that behavioral health belongs in the civil justice system as well as the criminal justice system. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Griffin.
Sure. Thank you to Franklin Avenue and Pastor Luter for hosting this, to the sponsors, the Sigma Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha, the Senior Voters Caucus, the WBOK, and my sisters of the New Orleans chapter of the Links Incorporated. During my last 20 years, almost 20 years as a judge on the Civil District Court, I have managed a fast-paced docket. But I've also taken the time to work within the judicial branch to help make sure that the judicial branch delivers what the community deserves. I have served as the chief judge of my court and chaired on many of the committees. I serve on the Supreme Court level of the Supreme Court Budgetary Control Committee, which manages the budget of all the state judiciary. I serve on judicial ethics. I serve on the Committee on Bar Admissions and served for 10 years as the actual writer of the Constitutional Law Bar Exam. I'm the immediate past president of the Louisiana Judicial Council of the National Bar Association, which is our African American judges. I'm currently the second vice president of the district judges, and I've previously served as president of the 4th and 5th Circuit judges. I say that because I think leadership and a decision and a reasonable attempt at helping the system to work better is important as we look at our next Supreme Court judge. I have served as a mentor, a foster mother, and volunteered within the community. It is important that our next Supreme Court justice be someone who is connected to the community and connected to the system. Because of my work within the community and my work within the judicial system, I have built a coalition within the legal profession and with the community that transcends race, gender, and political affiliation. My overall preparation to join the highest court is evident, and I ask you for your support. My name is Piper Griffin. I am number 49. Thank you.
Thanks to each of you for participating tonight, and a quick round of applause just on the amount of experience and work between the three candidates on this platform. We look forward to the election and supporting the next justice of the Louisiana Supreme Court. Thanks to all who participated and tuned in to watch. Thanks to our sponsors and tonight's host, Franklin Avenue. At this time, we ask that Pastor Luther, he gives us a benediction and blessing of the election season.
Great job, ladies. Great job, Sherman. Amen. It is my joy and privilege on behalf of the members of our church to host this historic forum on tonight. These two campaigns are so critical to our city. And when I was asked to host this, I did not hesitate. And so I want to thank the hundreds of you who've been watching by internet, those who are in the service on tonight, and we pray God's blessings upon each and every last one of you. Let's receive the benediction. Lord, we thank you and we praise you for this historical night in the life of Franklin Avenue Baptist Church. Thank you for the sponsors, God, who put this forum together, God. Thank you for all the candidates in the DA race and these ladies in the Supreme Court Justice race, God. We pray your blessings upon them collectively and individually. Bless them spiritually, physically, financially, mentally, and emotionally as they continue to campaign until November the 3rd. God, watch over every last one of us as we depart from this place. Give us traveling grace to our homes and to our families. Now may the love of God, the grace of Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of God's precious Holy Spirit be with each and every one of us until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless y'all. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you, Pastor. Again, today, National Voter Registration Day, Alpha Phi Alpha. One of our platforms is a voteless people is a hopeless people. Make sure that you are registered and that you vote in November. Thank you for joining us tonight.
What is the 2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, every address in the country will receive an invitation to complete a simple questionnaire, and there are 3 ways to respond. Number 1, do it online. Number 2, call by phone. Number 3, send it by mail. For those who don't respond, a census taker from your community will follow up and assist you.
Is my 2020 census data safe? After sending your census response, your personal information is kept safe. By law, it can't be shared with any other government agency, law enforcement, or landlord. No one. So take your 2020 census with peace of mind. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.